Welcome to the ESI Africa podcast, brought to you by your trusted power and energy multimedia journal. You can download this and all other episodes on esi-africa.com/podcasts. Let's get into today's conversation.
Across the world, hydropower provides a viable energy source, as seen in Ethiopia, where around 90% of the country's electricity supply comes from hydropower, and Canada sporting around 60%, while Mozambique's Cahora Bassa plant supports the country as well as its neighbors in the Southern African region. However, there are concerns around best practice and the sustainability of new and existing hydropower plants. I'm Nicolette, Pombo-van, and joining me to discuss this important topic is João Costa, who is the Executive Director of the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. João has been involved in numerous international development projects, has established a groundbreaking sustainability certification system, and spearheaded the foundation of the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. João, great to have you on the line with us.
Hi, Nicolette. It's a pleasure to be with you and to talk a little bit about the standard and hydropower in Africa.
Fantastic. So, João, the first point to focus on is that sustainability has become a defining factor in the sector. We have seen this, especially around the growing demand from financial institutions and regulators for assurance that projects are developed responsibly. So what's driving this shift, and does this perhaps create new opportunities for hydropower development in Africa?
Right. The awareness of sustainability, of intergenerational stewardship of our environment, of our communities. This is not specific to hydropower. It's coming up in our lives. We are more aware of, as a society, of the impacts of climate change. We are aware of the things that we consume, the waste that is generated, the water that we use, and the electricity that we also consume. We're aware of that. So there is a concern about where does the things that we consume come from, and is that generation, in the case of electricity, coming from a sustainable source. We all know that the fossil fuels are emitting carbon emissions, and for a number of reasons that is not good for our planet. So we're moving more into the renewables, more and more, the wind, solar, hydropower, geothermal. This is all good. It's a fantastic shift. It's called, as many call it, the transition for a low carbon economy. And hydropower is part of it. It's the oldest technology on the renewables, with generating electricity from flowing water from rivers. But as an older technology, we have seen its goods and its bads, right? So we need to understand the positive impacts and the negative impacts. And that's where the sustainability elements come from. How can we understand the impacts, good and bad, and make decisions on the trade-offs? How can we make decisions to optimize the good things, bring up all this electricity and low carbon power generation, while minimizing the negative impacts? So that's where we are coming from.
Right, and we have seen that in Africa there is a lot of hydropower capacity that has not been developed, and that hydropower is basically a massive battery, so it has that added factor to it. So let's now talk about the Alliance. As custodians of the Hydropower Sustainability Standard, how is the HS Alliance working to enhance sustainability performance, and what impact has this had on the way new projects are planned and assessed?
Right. The Alliance is a relatively new organization. However, our work on sustainability has started for more than a decade, 15 years actually, starting with the International Hydropower Association, with the development of tools that could help the sector and all the stakeholders in the sector understand what sustainability means for hydropower projects and what can all the actors do to make it happen. Hydropower has been around for a while. It will continue to be here, and there are opportunities for new projects to come in. But if we're not doing it sustainably and responsibly, then these new projects won't come to fruition, right? So we need to understand that. The Hydropower Sustainability Alliance is set up, and this is an important bit, as a multi-stakeholder organization. We have representation from industry, we have representation from financiers, from banks, from governments, and from civil society, right? So 4 key stakeholders. And having this space for consensus on what sustainability means and merging all these different viewpoints towards an understanding of what sustainability is crucial to move forward in the sector. So it's important to align expectations, align good practices, and keep improving them. And we are a space for that. We created that certification system and this entity to be the table of discussion and to find consensus, right? That's what we're all about. Important final point, we're also a place to receive criticism, to receive claims, and understand what is yet to be improved, what is not ideal in this standard, and how can we improve it, right? We are here to also to listen to those criticisms and try to move forward with that.
And being open to accept that nothing is perfect. There's always a pro and a con to everything that we do. But now let's look at a recent project on the ground, and that is in Zambia. The Ngonye Falls is the first hydropower plant in Africa to achieve a gold certification, and I'm interested to know if there are different levels of certification, and this is under the Alliance's Sustainability Standard. What does this level of gold certification mean in practical terms for this plant?
Okay, certification has 3 levels. The basic, which is certification, meaning a project meets all the minimum requirements that are set in the standard, okay? These are minimum requirements around biodiversity, community impacts, infrastructure safety, hydrological flows, climate change, resettlement. All these issues need to be well addressed and meet minimum requirements to get a project certified. It's not easy, okay? And above certification, we have 2 levels, silver and gold. They exist to recognize projects that go beyond this good practice. It's part of the standard of our certification system, not just to have a pass or fail test, but have also a platform to continuous improvement and to allow these good actors to show that it's possible to do better, to go beyond minimum and go to advanced requirements and meet best possible practice. That's what Ngonye Falls was able to demonstrate through their assessment against our standard. That means that they not only meet the minimum requirements, they go beyond it on all topics actually. So it's a clear sign that this project is committed to sustainability, to communities, to investors, to regulators, complies with the legal elements, and goes beyond the regulatory environment where it is located. So it is a responsible project. It's built to last. It's managed with integrity.
I take it that you actually had to go on site to evaluate the project. So I'd really love to hear what you saw on site and what lessons from the project other hydropower projects in Africa could adopt.
I visit many sites. I didn't visit Ngonye Falls. I did visit another project in Zambia and Zimbabwe and Mozambique as well, because a lot of work that we do is not only the certification, but it's also preparing a project to get audited, to get assessed and then certified. What we see in projects is a very thorough commitment from the teams to understand what is best practice, learn what are the experiences from other sides of the world. They want to understand what happened in Canada, what happened in Iceland, what happens in Mozambique, in Australia. What are other projects doing, and what are we doing that is already meeting those requirements and those expectations, and can we do to improve? And that's one of the most rewarding elements of our work here. So the other aspect of this, to complement my answer, is I'll give you some details on what the assessment is and what the site visit means. So to get a project audited, you need to go through a very thorough process of documental review. So auditors will go and check the environmental and social impact assessments, the resettlement action plans, biodiversity baseline studies, etc., etc. And then they go on site, for a few days, maybe a week, maybe 10 days, to do a site inspection and an important one, to interview communities, interview the operators, interview emergency organizations like firefighters or the police, etc. So interviewing all the stakeholders, and then with that site inspection, with that visual evidence, interview evidence, and documentary evidence, you have a full picture based on evidence of what the project is. So it's not just a study that is done on a desktop 500 miles away. It is a practical, very hands-on work in a project to understand the reality and give confidence that what is written in the report is based on evidence and is based on what's seen on site.
Right. And in terms of the different technologies, you've got these massive scale hydropower plants, and then you've also got pumped storage and run-of-river. Would the standards and certification apply to all of them?
The short answer is yes. It applies to all of them. It is designed to apply to any kind of hydropower project. It has been applied to all of them, actually, to large projects, large reservoirs, has been applied to pump storage projects. One project was recently certified in Scotland, in the UK, and it has been applied in also a very small project. The tiniest one is a 275 kilowatt, so it serves a community of 80 families in Colombia, and it's a fantastic example of how this is applicable can help communities, but can also help large businesses and their impact on the community, on a wider community, wider environmental impact. And that's a fun element of the standard. And you can also compare the results, because the report, either from a small one, from a large one, from a pump storage, from a run-of-river, has the same format. So you can compare, okay, is there anything good or bad? So in one of the additional values that we add is a bunch of data that can be used by the sector and understood by stakeholders and make better decisions in the future. So it's kind of serving also the sector in that way.
That's very good to know. So let's also move on to some of the finances. And this is around how does the Hydropower Sustainability Standard help make projects more bankable for investors? Because that's always a highly debatable topic around how do you finance these particular projects?
Absolutely. I feel like when we're talking about banks, financing, insurance companies, it's all about managing risk, managing the known, the unknowns, and make decisions based on that. And banks don't want to lose money. Well, nobody does, but there are strong due diligence processes to lend money in a number of different ways. For hydropower, due to its complexity, there's upstream environmental issues. There's downstream. There are nutrients flowing in the water. There's sedimentation. There's fish. There is, terrestrial habitats affected. There are communities. There are a number. There are very complex issues, and they impact each other. So having a way to systematically frame that complexity into a simple report that can be understood by financiers, understood also by communities, understood by the sector, it's crucial for a project to be bankable. In essence, it's kind of having a common language, right? Where, okay, the hydropower developers, I know what the banks want. They want this. Okay, let's do it. And the banks know, I know what they want to see. I'm not an expert in hydropower from a bank. If I'm a banker, I'm not necessarily an expert, but I need to understand what is the risk. There are always questions. Resettlement, isn't that a big topic? Yes. What have the project done to handle that? Okay, this is actually very good. Indigenous people is also a very complex topic, and the achievement of free, prior, and informed consent, etc. All those elements are very complex, but there are ways to manage it, and there are ways for projects to do it and demonstrate that. That's the final bit, how to demonstrate it in a transparent manner to these banks that the project is good. So when you cross those hurdles of risk identification, demonstration of good practice, the banks will be more confident, and they'll say, okay, I guess this checks a number of our boxes. We can move forward and bank this project because we know that it's been well handled, and it won't bite us back in reputational risk or bad news, etc.
Right. So the financiers can reach out to you for a lot of that information. But then how does the standard help governments and regulators ensure that hydropower projects align with their national development goals? And also looking at the information that is coming through for the latest edition of COP and how that is going to then transition governments and regulators looking at the energy sector.
Right. The role of standards like ours, voluntary sustainability standards, like the Hydropower Sustainability Standard, the Rainforest Alliance, the Forest Stewardship Council, they exist to be that beacon, that reference point that governments can and should lean onto to understand, okay, these are standards designed by an independent body, by a multi-stakeholder organism. Let's lean on them and understand how are we organizing our own regulatory environment, our own licensing procedures, and make sure that it is aligned. We work with a lot of governments in Colombia, in Indonesia, in Tajikistan, with the support of a number of organizations, including SECO, the State Secretariat of Economic Affairs of Switzerland. We work also with the World Bank to engage with hydropower developers, with civil society organizations, but also with governments. Again, having a common language is crucial. It's not just between banks and the developers. It's not just between the developer and the community. It's also with the government. So meeting the regulations, improving the regulations, and one of the things that one of the examples is very practical for a government to follow a standard or to use a standard without taking an extreme step of saying, oh, this is now the law. That doesn't happen. It's too much. But using our standard as a guidance, as a recognition of projects that achieve a standard, they can be recognized and come forward in a pipeline, for example. So use the standard as guidelines, as building capacity within the national companies. Align the discussion around sustainability in hydropower. Build trust on civil society organizations that these hydropower projects, they're important for our country's transition to a low carbon economy. We want more wind, we want more solar. For that, we need a backup for these variable renewables, right? What is our backup? We need storage as well, as you mentioned, the pump storage. how do we store this energy? Is it batteries? Is it gas and other fossil fuels? Or is it hydropower? Hydro is a low carbon solution. Well, let's try to do it. Yes, these projects may have issues, but we have systems to manage those. So let's build trust and make sure that these projects are good, so they can really be a part of a just energy transition.
That is definitely the opportunities that are then going to arise from that, in having a common language around the sustainability of hydropower, and hydropower being such a factor in the African market. So that brings me to looking at what are the challenges that you have found that have been common in the African market around hydropower projects, around the governance of it, the social engagement, environmental management, and how the standard addresses these. Because I think in the African market, it's a little bit different from other regions.
There are challenges sometimes in uneven governance capacity, right? That common language. What do financiers want? What do development banks want? We have the lucky to work with the African Development Bank, with the World Bank in Africa, and there's a big role on building capacity on hydropower developers and governments in Africa. We're working in Zambia, Zimbabwe, Mozambique. We'll probably work in Ghana soon. We're working in Morocco as well, and we see a lot of these aspects. Okay, so this is in general, right? Building capacity on what sustainability is. The second one is embedding this capacity and this commitment to sustainability early on. You can't come late on a project development stage and now we forgot we need to take care of this biodiversity aspects and community engagement. Maybe it's too late. Community engagement needs to start very early on. Needs to be continuous. Needs to be free. Needs to be prior. And it needs to be in good faith. If you come in later as a developer and say, "Oh, this is the project's already, everything has been decided," that's not a good way to tackle this. So, understanding what it is, sustainability, embedding it early, right? Make sure that you keep those elements of baseline biodiversity data, early engagement with communities. Make sure that you keep that in a transparent manner. So I'd say that the final point is the transparency element. There, in many places, not just in Africa, there may exist a feeling that, okay, let's do this under the radar and develop this project, and then later on it will be too late to cancel or something. But that, from our experience, will lead into further risk, right? It will lead into protests, more delays. Everyone loses money on that, and not the best projects come to conclusion. So the best way is embed that commitment and make your decisions transparently. Show what you're doing, and this is very much linked to the bankability. If a project works with transparency, involves communities early on, establishes decisions on sound baseline studies on biodiversity, etc., then that is the way to go. And those are the challenges that we need to overcome, for sure.
Right. So I want to bring it back to the certification as my last question to you. And that is looking at a project, after it's been assessed, how can the Hydropower Sustainability Standard continue to guide its performance over the long term? Because these hydropower projects are there for many, many years. Right.
The standard is I'll give you a longer answer, but just to cover the whole life cycle. So we certify projects in the design stage, construction, and operation. Either of these stages. You don't have to do it all. Ideally, it would be like that. But we also have a tool that's called HydroSelect that we launched very recently, that before even the decision on a specific project has been made, it evaluates the options in terms of energy development on that sense. So if you can come in early on with HydroSelect, evaluate risks, highlight the red flags on some projects, and choose the right ones. Then do a certification or at least an assessment of the project against a standard early on during the design preparation stage. During construction, do another one to make sure that, because a lot of things change, right, between design and construction. Subcontractors come in. It's very important to make sure that the plans are being put in place as the project moves forward. And then during operations, that's still there are still many good opportunities to improve a project, even an older project, as we've seen in several places. You can still do a lot to improve what has been done in the past. After the certification, there's an action plan. Whether you certify or not certify a project, there's always an action plan that can give the developer a number of actions that can be done to improve it. And that's a fantastic way to keep continuous improvement, right? So you do a certification throughout the stages, you have an action plan to keep improving, and then there is a time frame for that certification, after which you can and should recertify your project to make sure that you keep the certification label up to date and keep improving your project and get the recognition, make sure that the processes are in place and the project remains responsible and sustainable.
That is a very good track record that they can then build up.
Yeah, absolutely. I can give you another example of another element that is part of it, which I was almost missing. I was focusing too much on the project itself. The element that we feel, even thinking about the projects we're doing in Africa, that we feel it's very impactful is the capacity of the staff that is working on those hydropower projects. We work a lot in training that staff on sustainability, training the engineers, the environmental managers, up to very executive levels. We also have an executive training course for the message being deployed, not just bottom up but also top down. And when these the people have the skills and the knowledge to implement this sustainability in their projects, then it just happens naturally. And that's one of the most beautiful things that we do is work with the people in those companies, make sure that they understand all of this. We train them as internal auditors, we train them as independent assessors, and we've seen this happen in several places where staff members from a company in one country can then become auditors, go to other countries around the world, assess projects there, bring back that knowledge, and then basically share and elevate the knowledge of sustainability to their own company. So that's one of the beautiful things and very rewarding for us. And ultimately, that has the major impact on the sustainability of the projects.
That's a perfect way to end off today's discussion around all of those job opportunities that will eventually arise. So thank you so much for joining me today.
Well, thank you very much, Nicolette. It was great talking to you, great questions, and I'm happy to do this again. And I just like to talk about our work and sustainability in general. So it was a pleasure.
Fantastic. So that brings us to the end of today's conversation with João Costa, the Executive Director of the Hydropower Sustainability Alliance. And thank you to our listeners. If you found today's episode valuable, please share it with your colleagues and join us again next time as we explore more of the innovation shaping power, energy, and water sectors. Until then, I'm Nicolette Pombo-van, and this is ESI Africa Insights.
You have been listening to an ESI Africa podcast. For the latest news, reports, and interviews on power, energy, and related industries, visit the ESI Africa website on esi-africa.com or follow us on social media. Until next time, Thank you for tuning in.